Welcome back to, or if you're here for the first time, welcome for the first time to Through a Glass Darkly Radio. You're listening to us on United Public Radio. The intro to this podcast, live stream, radio show is Mark of the Doomslayer by Karl at White Bat Audio. He's got an entire YouTube account with awesome music just like that. So please do check it out because I've been using his intro for quite some time. Anyway, today we have a very packed show based on the Nordics, and it's a lot. So I'm going to try to get through it. But before I start that, I have to make a comment about current geopolitics and the absolute incompetence and stupidity of those who are running our national security establishment. So, good for Ukraine. If I were Ukrainian, I would, this was a great victory for them. It was absolutely a danger zone for the entire world. One aspect, and for people who don't know, I don't really talk about this that much, but my thesis advisor when I was in graduate school was Dr. Ash Carter. He subsequently became Obama's Secretary of Defense. So I know a little bit about this stuff. And if there's one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to escalate toward a nuclear war. And there's a number of things that we've done that have been utterly stupid, like attacking Russian early warning radars, moving nuclear assets to Lakenheath and Mildenhall, Feltwell, all that stuff. Now, I understand that one makes a little bit more sense, but striking early warning radars to blind the Russians in case we decide to sneak in a little nuclear attack is excuse me, I shouldn't curse. Is freaking stupid. Okay, I was about to use the R word. Well, today, the morons advising the Ukrainians decided to take out a ton of Russian strategic bombers. Okay, so not only are they kind of semi-blinded to a nuclear attack, but they also have lost part of their nuclear deterrent, which makes it increasingly likely that there will be nuclear war. Okay, I don't think it's in the cards because Putin is the only one in this whole crisis who's playing with a rational deck. But the same people who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline are like providing Ukrainians intelligence and advisory and things like that to do stuff like that. If I were Putin, I would strike back, and I would make it clear that I struck back. So there are tons of Russian operatives here. Expect an attack. Because these people who are currently making decisions in our national security establishment, I just don't know what they're doing. They really don't know what they're doing. If Ashton Carter is turning in his grave right now, right? You don't deliberately attack Russian nuclear assets. You risk nuclear war every single time. All right, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Hope you can sleep tonight, folks. Hope you can sleep tonight. Anyway, let's see some quick comments that have come up. Yeah, fasting is a huge cure for things. Dark Star requesting flyby. Yeah, probably on my house. Oh yeah, this is just 70 radio live streams. In terms of episodes, I'm currently working on 6 of them right now. The last of them is 384. And I think I've probably published not quite 700 videos, but I'm getting there. I'm getting close. So, hey, Logan, good to see you, man. Hey, good to see you, Gray Owl. All right, well, let's get started. I know people didn't come here to hear me rant about geopolitics and the utter incompetence of people in our national security establishment. But, I can't help myself sometimes. All right, so let us get started on what people are actually here for. Nordic aliens, Palladians, benevolent space brothers, or galactic watchers, or all the above. Imagine drifting off to sleep and then suddenly awakening to find two tall, luminously pale strangers at your bedside. They have long blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and an uncanny youthful beauty. They radiate calmness and communicate without moving their lips, a gentle voice echoing inside your mind. These otherworldly visitors are the Nordic aliens, sometimes called Palladians or Space Brothers, an alleged race of extraterrestrial beings who look strikingly human. For decades, they have appeared in UFO contact stories as benevolent teachers and silent watchers, perhaps even as cosmic guardians for humanity. Today, we'll delve into the fascinating mythology and reported encounters of these Nordic non human intelligences, exploring their physical traits, telepathic gifts, roles in abduction lore, claimed origins in the stars, and the motives attributed to them by both experiencers and insiders. Along the way, we'll consider sourced accounts from famous contactees like George Adamski and Billy Meyer, consider whistleblower testimonies from military and intelligence circles, and draw parallels to ancient myths of gods, angels, and ascended masters. Are the Nordics truly benevolent space kin watching over us? Or are they a modern myth shaped by our hopes and cultural imagery? Let's find out in this deep dive into the lore of the Nordic aliens. Who are the Nordic aliens? In UFO lore, Nordic aliens are described as an ancient extraterrestrial species of tall, human-like beings with Scandinavian or Aryan features. The term Nordic comes from their resemblance to Nordic European people. Think high cheekboned, athletic men and women with fair skin, blue or green eyes, and long blonde, sometimes reddish blonde hair. They are typically reported as standing around 6 to 7 feet tall, or for those in Europe and elsewhere, 1.8 to 2.1 meters, with youthful, graceful appearances that radiate health and beauty. In fact, their looks are so close to humans that contactees often remark they could walk among us unnoticed, especially if they wear sunglasses or contact lenses to hide any subtle differences in eye appearances. And in some accounts, even claim these beings lack an Earth like iris or have an unusual aura necessitating such disguises. Believers ascribe a host of psychic and mythical qualities to the Nordics. They almost always They're almost always described as communicating telepathically, conveying thoughts, images, or feelings directly into a person's mind rather than using spoken language. Experiencers often report that being in the presence of a Nordic alien feels comforting and paternal, as if an unseen warmth or love encompasses their mental voice. In UFO literature, Nordics are depicted as paternal, watchful, smiling, affectionate, and youthful, radiating an aura of calm authority. Their reported abilities sometimes border on the magical, from healing powers and telekinesis to the capacity to induce vivid spiritual visions, though such claims come mainly from mystical or channeled material rather than hard evidence. Technologically, Nordic ETs are said to possess highly advanced spacecraft and interstellar travel capabilities. Witnesses have described their ships as classic flying saucers or sometimes elongated cigar-shaped craft, often observed silently monitoring events from a distance. Unlike the infamous black triangles or other ominous UFOs, the Nordic craft in stories tend to appear peaceful, gently humming silver discs or radiant orbs that seem to respect a kind of cosmic non-interference policy. Indeed, many accounts characterize Nordics as observers more than invaders, members of a galactic community who generally maintain a distance and watch humanity's progress, stepping in only subtly or when absolutely needed. They are even said to belong to a sort of cosmic council, often dubbed the Galactic Federation, which purportedly oversees different worlds' development. While hovering at the edges of our awareness, these alien space brothers purportedly send us messages of guidance through telepathic impressions, dreams, and by direct contact with selected individuals known as contactees. In terms of origin stories, where do these radiant human-like aliens come from? Contactee lore offers a few different answers. In the earliest stories of the 1950s, Nordics often introduced themselves as Venusians, visitors from the planet Venus, or as emissaries from elsewhere in our solar system, like Mars or Saturn. This was before science knew just how inhospitable these worlds really are. Later, as our understanding of the solar system grew, claims about Nordics shifted to more distant havens. The Pleiades star clusters became the most frequently cited home of the Nordics, hence the common name Pleiadians. The Pleiades, about 400 light years away, is a beautiful cluster also called the Seven Sisters. And contactees have pinpointed specific stars or planets such as Era or Tygenta as the Nordics' origin. In the famous Swiss case of Billy Meyer, for example, the alien visitors said they came from the Plejaren, a race in a dimension shifted just fractions of a second from our own Pleiades system. Other sources suggest Nordics might hail from star systems like Aldebaran, Lyra, or even hidden realms closer to home. One lore claims a fraction of Nordics live within the Earth's interior, the mythological Agartha, explaining legends of a hidden world populated by tall, wise beings. In short, the answer to their origin depends on which story you read. They might be our neighbors from Venus, distant cousins from the Pleiades, or interdimensional travelers passing through. In all cases, they're portrayed as an ancient race, technologically and spiritually far older than humanity, possibly having visited Earth for millennia. Before we go further, it's important to note that all these descriptions come from anecdotal reports, channeled writings, and speculative UFO literature. Also, AI generated this script. I generated the kind of the query and the request, but AI generated the script. It's always important for me to tell the audience that. There's no concrete scientific evidence that Nordic aliens exist. However, these narratives, at least not within kind of the public domain. However, these narratives have become a rich modern mythology, blending hopes of benign cosmic family with echoes of ancient legends. We will treat the accounts with an open mind, but also with appropriate caveats, recognizing that this is a realm of belief and experience, not confirmed fact. With that in mind, let's explore how Nordic NHIs first entered the public consciousness through some remarkable contactee stories. All right, so first we're going to cover some of the early accounts of the Space Brothers phenomena. The first wave of Nordic alien sightings emerged in the 1950s, an era when humanity was both excited and anxious about the dawn of the space age. In those days, the term UFO was new, and flying saucers captured headlines. Unlike today's eerie alien abductions, the earliest claimed encounters were often friendly meetings, the beginning of what's known as the contactee movement. The individuals at the heart of these stories, the contactees, said they met extraterrestrials face to face, often in deserts or remote areas, and returned with uplifting messages for mankind. Sorry, like this language pollution is infested. I won't get into it. The aliens they described were often Nordic-looking beings, quickly dubbed Space Brothers for their fraternal human appearance and benevolent demeanor. One of the most celebrated early contactees was George Adamski, a Polish-American mystic and amateur astronomer. On November 20th, 1952, Adamski and several friends were skywatching in the California desert when, by his account, a silvery disk landed and a being emerged. Adamski described this visitor as a friendly fellow named Orthon, a handsome, long-haired young man from the planet Venus. Orthon's hair was blonde, his eyes blue, and he had a ruddy, youthful complexion. He was, in essence, a human-looking Nordic alien down to the boots, which Adamski noted bore strange symbols. In their brief encounter, conducted through hand signals and telepathy, Orthon conveyed that he and his people were concerned about Earth's nuclear weapons and humanity's warlike tendencies. This was just a few years after Hiroshima and amid the Cold War, and indeed, warning against atomic bombs became a central theme of nearly all Space Brother contacts of the 1950s. Adamski said the Venusian invited him aboard the saucer for a ride, and over subsequent meetings introduced him to other extraterrestrials from Mars and Saturn as well. These beings, Adamski claimed, spoke of spiritual wisdom, the unity of creation, and the need for humans to abandon warfare and greed. In his 1955 book, Inside the Spaceships, Adamski recounted being taken to a mothership and listening to lectures from these enlightened aliens who, quote, had come to Earth out of concern for humanity's self-destructive ways, end quote. They emphasized that we are on the cusp of either great advancement or terrible destruction, and they hoped to guide us toward the former. Adamski wasn't alone. Throughout the 1950s, dozens of contactees in the United States and Europe told similar stories of encounters with benevolent, human-appearing extraterrestrials. Often these beings were claimed to be from planets in our solar system, Venus being the favorite, but also Mars, Jupiter, even a supposed undiscovered planet. For example, Howard Menger, a New Jersey sign painter, said he met beautiful Venusian and Saturnian astronauts in the woods behind his house, including a blonde woman in a shimmering jumpsuit who invited him aboard her spacecraft. George Van Tassel, a former aircraft mechanic, claimed that in 1953 he began receiving telepathic messages from a Nordic alien named Ashtar, commandant of a space fleet. Van Tassel became famous for hosting annual spacecraft conventions at Giant Rock in California, where he and other contactees relayed the Space Brother messages of peace. Similarly, Daniel Fry, Truman Bethurum, Orfeo Angelucci, Elizabeth Clarer, and others each had their own spin. Some Nordics were from other star systems or even other dimensions, but the persona was consistent. They looked like idealized humans and came bearing warnings and philosophical teachings. These space brothers were typically portrayed as spiritually advanced guardians watching over Earth. They decried our nuclear tests, racial discord, and environmental neglect long before these concerns became mainstream. Contactees relayed that the visitors wanted nothing in return except that we heed their counsel and quote-unquote grow up as a species. Often the aliens even had biblical or angelic overtones. They spoke of a creator, of universal love, and sometimes identified with figures like Jesus or archangels in thinly veiled terms. It's no surprise that many contactees either founded or inspired new UFO religions blending science fiction with spirituality. For instance, George King formed the Aetherius Society after claiming to channel cosmic masters, including an entity from Venus. Guy Ballard's I Am movement in the 1930s foreshadowed this by mixing theosophy with encounters with ascended masters on Mount Shasta, who sounded a lot like Nordic aliens in retrospect. Notably, during this period, the public and media were fascinated by these accounts. Although mainstream scientists were skeptical, the Space Brother narrative offered a hopeful alternative to the frightening concept of alien invaders. Cultural historian David Scull noted that the popularity of 1951 film The Day the Earth Stood Still, featuring a peaceful human-looking alien, Klaatu, coming to warn against nuclear aggression, likely primed the pump for Nordic alien stories. Scholar Stephanie Kelly Romano later described alien contact beliefs as a living myth and observed that Nordics in particular are often associated with spiritual growth and love among experiencers. In those early Cold War years, the idea of wise extraterrestrial siblings guiding us away from self-destruction clearly struck a chord. However, even at the time, critics and skeptics raised eyebrows. Many of the contactees' aliens appeared too good to be true. They were quite literally perfect Aryan ideals and looks and spoke like theosophical gurus. Some social commenters pointed out the uncomfortable fact that these so-called aliens resembled an American or European fantasy of perfected humans, conveniently often white and blonde. Indeed, the very term Nordic betrays a link to earthly racial notions. UFO historian Jules Evans noted that one of Adamski's companions, George Hunt Williamson, had ties to occult fascist circles and even reported that Orthon's shoe left behind a swastika imprint, a detail which alarmed some observers, suggesting that the contactee lore was entangled with the Aryan mysticism popular in certain fringe groups. It doesn't necessarily reflect on every story, but it's a reminder that human cultural motifs often bleed into alien narratives. We should keep that in mind as we parse their motives and messages. By the end of the 1950s, a pattern had been established. Nordic aliens were seen as benevolent, almost angelic figures, bringing messages of peace and love to select individuals. They earned the nickname Space Brothers because they were typically male or androgynous and fraternal, though in truth, many accounts also featured female Nordic ETs. described as stunningly beautiful, sometimes even inspiring romantic or protective feelings in the contactee. These narratives laid the groundwork for all later depictions of Nordics. But notably, as the decades went on, the UFO scene shifted, and another group of aliens would take center stage in the popular imagination: the Greys. Around the 1960s to 1970s, UFO reports took a darker turn. Instead of friendly desert rendezvous with chatty space brothers, we began to hear frightening tales of alien abductions, people pulled from their beds or cars by small gray skinned humanoids with large black eyes. The quintessential gray aliens, popularized by cases like Betty and Barney Hill's 1961 abduction and later by Whitley Strieber's Communion in 1987, became the new icons of extraterrestrial encounters. These beings were impersonal experimenters, not spiritual mentors. As a result, Nordic encounters became relatively less common in UFO lore after the 1950s. The Greys supplanted the Nordics as the primary stars of abduction scenarios, at least in the English speaking world. However, Nordics did not vanish entirely. In some abduction cases and insider accounts, Nordic looking beings still play intriguing roles, sometimes as allies, other times as silent observers, and occasionally as the ones in charge. Abductee testimonies featuring Nordics often describe them as working alongside or above the Greys. For instance, a person might recall being on a UFO surrounded by short gray aliens performing medical procedures, while a tall gray Nordic stands in the background, seemingly overseeing the operation or calming the patient telepathically. This has led to speculation in UFO circles that the Greys are subservient to Nordics or even biologically engineered by them. In other narratives, Nordics intervene to rescue abductees from the clutches of the Greys or to mitigate the trauma of the experience. It's almost as if they've taken on a good cop role. The Greys might scare or harm people, but the Nordics either prevent serious damage or later give the experiencer a reassuring message that softens the blow. One famous abduction case with a Nordic twist is the story of Travis Walton. In 1975, Walton was a young forestry worker in Arizona who went missing for 5 days after his coworkers saw him struck by a beam of light from a UFO. When Travis Walton reappeared, dehydrated and confused, he eventually told an astonishing story. He had been taken aboard an alien spacecraft. Inside, he first encountered short, big-headed gray beings who examined him. Feeling threatened, he fought them off, only to meet another set of beings. These looked entirely human. Walton described tall, muscular men and women, or all with blonde hair and serene, almost too perfect features. They didn't speak, at least not verbally, but gently led him to a table and placed an oxygen-like mask over his face. He lost consciousness and remembers nothing until he awoke roadside on Earth. Walton's case became one of the most well-known abduction stories, dramatized in the film Fire in the Sky. Crucially, his account included Nordic-like aliens, which he initially thought were human space travelers due to their appearance. They wore blue jumpsuits and had an air of authority. In his book, The Walton Experience, Travis speculated they might have been caretakers or medics, possibly tending to him after the Greys' procedures. This case illustrates how Nordics are woven into abduction lore. They appear less frequently than the Greys, but when they do, it's often as the more compassionate or relatable figures among the alien cast. Other abductees have echoed similar themes. Some report that during experiences of forced medical exams or bizarre experiences, a tall, fair-haired being would suddenly appear to either stop the procedure or to telepathically reassure them, saying things like, "You will not be harmed," or "We mean you no distress." A notable pattern is that Nordic aliens, if present in abductions, tend to deliver messages of peace or concern for Earth, rather than instilling fear. In fact, researchers like Preston Dennett and Dr. Leo Sprinkle, who studied many contactees, found that encounters involving Nordics were more likely to be reported as positive or transformative, whereas purely gray encounters were often traumatic. It's as if the Nordics maintain the old Space Brothers ethos even when mingling in the abduction scenario. They remind the experiencer of a greater purpose or context behind the strange events. There are also cases of direct Nordic abductions, though rarer. In these, individuals claim they were taken not by bug-eyed greys, but by human-like extraterrestrials. One example is the experience of Antonio Vilas Boas in 1957 Brazil, one of the earliest abduction cases. He reported being taken by human-looking aliens, albeit shorter than classic Nordics, and even coerced into a breeding encounter with a pale, blue-eyed alien woman. While Boa's captors weren't the angelic instructors of Adamski's ilk, they were more human in manner than the later Greys, and the female's description, fair-haired, attractive, though oddly silent, overlaps with the Nordic template. Similarly, in the 1970s friendship case in Italy, Il Caso Amicizia, Il Caso Amicizia, a group of Italians claimed ongoing secret meetings with a collective of extraterrestrials living in underground bases. Those ETs reportedly included tall, Nordic-looking individuals among them, who worked with shorter aliens. The friendship aliens ate and socialized with their human friends, stressing spiritual growth and cosmic unity. A very Nordic attitude, one might say. These stories blur the lines between contactee and abductee, since the humans involved felt more like collaborators than victims. As the 20th century progressed, Nordic aliens also began appearing in conspiracy theories and alleged secret programs. A number of self-proclaimed whistleblowers from within military intelligence circles have asserted that Nordic-looking ETs are real and have interacted with world governments. We'll explore those claims in the next segment, but it's worth noting here that in many of these accounts, the Nordics are cast as the good guys among alien visitors. They are said to oppose any harmful exploitation of humanity by other alien species. For example, some conspiracies allege a covert rivalry or even conflict between benevolent Nordics and malevolent reptilian aliens or domineering Greys. While the evidence for such cosmic politics is anecdotal at best, the narrative is clear. Nordics occupy the niche of galactic protectors or wise elder siblings, while certain other alien types get the role of sinister invaders or manipulators. Before we move on, let's recap the role of Nordics in abduction lore. Unlike the 1950s Space Brothers, who openly landed and preached, the modern Nordics often operate from the shadows. They might show up during another alien encounter to mitigate it, or they might quietly contact individuals through dreams and channel messages rather than overt displays. Their presence is less overt in recent days, but they remain in constant undercurrent in UFO mythology, the comforting counterpoint to the image of cold gray abductors. Now let's turn to what government insiders, whistleblowers, and conspiracists have claimed about these enigmatic beings and how that ties into the broader picture. So we're going to go into some whistleblower accounts and alleged government encounters. And then after that, I think it would be time for me to start looking at comments for a little bit. Stories of alien contact aren't limited to private citizens in the desert or abductees on lonely roads. Over the years, numerous former military personnel, government officials, and self-styled insiders have come forward with claims that various alien species are not only real, but have interacted with world governments behind closed doors. In these narratives, Nordic aliens often featured prominently, again, usually as a positive presence, even as treaties or conflicts are described with other less friendly ETs. One of the most legendary tales in UFO lore is the alleged meeting between U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower and extraterrestrials in 1954. According to this persistent rumor, President Eisenhower mysteriously disappeared from public view for a short time in February 1954 under the cover story of an emergency dental surgery. In truth, so the story goes, he was whisked to Edwards Air Force Base, where he met with two different groups of aliens. The first group were described as Nordic-looking ETs who had a stunning proposal. They urged the U.S. to abandon its nuclear weapons program in exchange for advanced knowledge or technology, promising they would help guide humanity toward peace. The Nordics warned about the dangers of atomic war, echoing the Space Brother message, and offered spiritual support if we could all just get along. However, as the tale continues, Eisenhower balked at the demand to disarm in the tense Cold War climate. Subsequently, a second meeting occurred, this time with the Gray aliens, who struck a very different bargain. The Greys allegedly agreed to share some of their technological know-how with the U.S. military, but in return, they wanted free rein to abduct humans and livestock for their own experiments. A secret treaty was supposedly signed, often referred to as the Grenada Treaty, the Greada Treaty, I've heard it both in conspiracy circles, formalizing this unsettling exchange. Technology for abductions. The Nordics, being unwilling to condone such a trade-off, supposedly departed disappointed. Now, it must be emphasized that no solid evidence ever emerged of Ike's alien summit. It remains an unverified piece of ufological folklore, reported by a handful of whistleblowers and UFO authors decades after the fact. But it's a telling narrative in how it positions the Nordics. They are the morally righteous aliens who wanted the best for humanity, but got turned down. Whereas the Greys are cast as the pragmatic, self-serving ones, willing to cut a deal that treats humans as lab rats. The outcome, according to lore, is that Earth's powers that be aligned with the Greys, while the Nordics perhaps continue to watch from afar, hoping we wise up eventually. This story has permeated UFO literature and even pop culture, illustrating the adoring trope of Nordics as benevolent ETs frustrated by human folly. Apart from that famous anecdote, several officials and military personnel have made statements about human-like aliens. Perhaps the most prolific profile was Paul Hellyer, Canada's Minister of Defense in the 1960s. Decades after his retirement, Hellyer became outspoken about UFOs and extraterrestrials. In 2014, he gave a televised interview in which he claimed at least 4 alien species have been visiting Earth for thousands of years, and among them are some that look just like us. Hellyer said these aliens could walk down the street and you wouldn't know, noting that there are some living on Venus, Mars, and Saturn's moon. A remarkable statement that mirrored early contactee claims. He warned that they were concerned about human warfare and environmental damage, especially after we developed nuclear bombs. Hellyer even asserted that many alien species are benign and want to help, but one or two might not be, hinting at the classic good versus bad alien dichotomy. Although Hellyer did not explicitly use the term Nordic blondes in that interview, he has elsewhere mentioned species like the tall whites, often considered a variety of Nordic alien, but not always, and Nordic blondes as being among those present on Earth. His source of information is thought to be a mix of whistleblower testimonies from the Disclosure Project and others, and personal research. Regardless, hearing a former defense minister seriously discuss human-looking ETs was striking. Hellyer told Russia Today that they've been visiting our planets for thousands of years. There's been a lot more activity in the past few decades since we invented the atomic bomb, and they're very concerned about that. He went on to say nearly all of them are benign, but one or two are not, and that's what I'm investigating now. This essentially encapsulates the narrative. Nordics and their kin as benevolent, a couple of other species as possibly hostile. Another influential insider was Robert Dean, a retired U.S. Army Command Sergeant Major, who in the 1990s claimed to have seen a top-secret NATO document called the Assessment. According to Dean, this 1964 NATO study concluded that at least 4 extraterrestrial civilizations were visiting Earth. Of those 4, one group looked exactly like human beings, so much so that they could be sitting next to you in a restaurant or an airplane, and you'd never know. Dean frequently implied these were the so-called Nordic ETs, and he mused that it was lucky they were friendly, given their ability to infiltrate. Dean's claims are hard to verify, but he became a respected figure in UFO conferences, reinforcing the idea that Western governments knew about the Nordic ETs as far back as the 1960s. Then there are those like Charles Hall, a former U.S. Air Force weather observer, who wrote a series of memoirs, Millennial Hospitality, about working near an Ellis Air Force Base in Nevada in the 1960s. Hall claims he interacted with a race of extraterrestrials he dubbed tall whites, who were slender, pale beings up to 7 feet tall that lived in a desert installation. The tall whites, according to Hall, look somewhat like Nordic aliens, though with extremely pale, almost chalky white skin and larger eyes. They would occasionally come into Las Vegas disguised in human clothing, he said, and they had an arrangement with the Air Force. We allowed them to R&R at our bases, and in turn, they gave certain technological insights. Hall's books detail sometimes tense interactions. The tall whites could be temperamental, but he maintained that they weren't overtly hostile, just very different. UFO researchers often characterize Hall's tall whites as a variant of Nordic NHIs, given the human-like form and the Nevada connection that Hellier later also mentioned. It's fascinating that Hall's account also echoes the theme of aliens blending among us, a concept also popular in TV and movies. For example, the alien integration story of Men in Black or The X-Files. We should also note Clifford Stone, a former U.S. Army sergeant who in 2001 testified at the Disclosure Project that he had been part of UFO crash retrieval teams. Stone claimed the U.S. had cataloged 57 varieties of alien beings, many of them indistinguishable from humans. It's an extraordinary assertion that numerous alien races, some looking like us, are out there interacting covertly. While Stone didn't provide proof, his testimony added to the pile of insider lore, suggesting Nordics are a known quantity in secret programs. And what about Europe and other countries? Similar stories emerge. In Russia, there have been declassified reports of cosmonauts encountering space angels, giant glowing human figures seen outside their spacecraft, reported in 1984 by the Soviet Soyuz 7 crew. The cosmonauts described them as humanoid, serene, and surrounded by halos, essentially angelic Nordics. Meanwhile, in Latin America, contactees like Luis Fernando Mesteo in Bolivia or Sixto Paz Wells in Peru have long claimed ongoing contacts with beings from the Pleiades or Orion who look quite human. These contacts often involve meditation-induced meetings or teleportation to alien bases, so they blur the line between physical and spiritual encounter. Still, the descriptions, tall, wise, luminous people, are straight out of the Nordic playbook. Okay, so what's the motivation of including these insider tales? Well, they serve to illustrate that the idea of Nordic aliens pervades not just New Age circles, but also the fringe of military conspiracy lore. They appear in narratives about UFO cover-ups and galactic diplomacy. In almost every instance, the Nordics or tall whites or whatever specific name are seen as either neutral or benevolent. If you hear of alien bad guys in these stories, it's usually the Greys, often accused of treating humans like guinea pigs, or the dreaded reptilians, portrayed as power-hungry, shape-shifting infiltrators in some conspiracy theories. Nordics, by contrast, are frequently said to be working against those nefarious agendas, sometimes even protecting humans or collaborating with factions of our military who resist gray reptilian influence. This dynamic has essentially made Nordics into the guardian angels of UFO lore, albeit operating in the shadows. Of course, to a skeptic, these whistleblower stories are modern legends or misinformation at worst. Yet they fascinate us because they hint at a larger cosmic drama. Earth caught in a tug-of-war between benevolent and malign ET forces, with familiar-looking space brothers quietly shielding us. It's essentially a sci-fi reimagining of ancient dualistic struggles, good versus evil, angel versus demons, projected onto extraterrestrials. Speaking of ancient themes, this is a perfect segue into examining how Nordic aliens have been linked to older spiritual and mythological archetypes. Could it be that these supposed aliens are actually the same entities humans once called gods, angels, or other supernatural beings? Let's explore those intriguing parallels next. All right. I think now is as good a time to take a much needed break and start going through the comments. Okay. All right, here we go. I'm just going to burn through some of these. All right, so Scott Ian is asking about the going back when I was talking about the current attack on the strategic bombers. Um, let's see. Yeah, so Ukraine obviously did it, but I don't think they could have accomplished that. A, without our knowledge, and B, without our support. Like, because it's so strategic that you need satellite imagery and all sorts of crazy stuff. Rather them than a bear. I'm not sure what that means. Ed. Okay. Hey, Miss Tammy. Good to see you. Yeah, it's Miss Tammy. It's given that nobody in the mainstream media will touch it right now, that's usually means somebody's right over target. I just actually interviewed Scott Roeder, and the family that had this experience has gone dark. There are there's information that indicates that they've been intimidated in some way into going quiet. So chances are that the Vegas thing is real. Hi, His Highness. Triangles are the good guys. Us. Since 2020, I don't think we're the good guys, His Highness. I really don't. I really don't think we're the good guys anymore. Terrence, good to see you, man. Terrence, he writes, "Hey Sean, thanks for your service and awesome work on this channel. I appreciate you, Terrence. Thank you." His Highness writes, "Long life and prosperity." You too, His Highness. Just Gray Owl writes, life is kind of like the ocean. You got to surf it one wave at a time. Very true. Terrence Rillis is writing, "I will bring ramen and ACDC when they show up." I don't know if ramen's a great idea. Maybe something a little bit more tasty, but ACDC I can live with. Yeah, Fast Mamba Jamma, like that's nice that Christian Harloff says something big is coming in 2027. That's been in the zeitgeist for the past 2 years, so there's nothing new there. Um, anyway, nothing against you, but it's against these podcasters who have, you know, very little knowledge of the thing they podcast about. Yeah, Terrence Willis is saying, "I don't think it's coincidence that 2027 equals aliens and AI revelations at the same time." It's also 100 years after the Roswell crash, by the way, or not 100 years, 80 years after the Roswell crash. Fast Mama Jama saying, "My bird is telepathic. She makes coughing sounds when I go to the garage. She knows what's up." Jalea Jalal's writing, "Valiant Thor, who Laura Eisenhower swears or swore was a guest of military industrial complex deep states." Yeah, it's possible. Fast Mama Gemma is writing, "Black budget is 21 trillion. Everything is deep state." Or or transnational interests have siphoned off 21 million from the American people. That's the Catherine Fitz number. For folks who don't know, Catherine Fitz was a former investment banker at Dillon Reed, and then she kind of started doing, detailed research. She's very, very intelligent. She uncovered scams that would basically, the intelligence community would raise their black budget by defaulting on home loans through HUD over and over and over again and raising money that way. Okay, Fast Moment Jeremiah's writing, the secret is not the type of alien, but the types of aliens. Finding the types of aliens will lead us to the types of humans. Jalay Jalal's writing, Nellis Base Weather Station. They are shapeshifters, is what is reported. They have stun tech, strong enough to break bones if threatened, have families, careers, specific roles. They are under treaty. Roger Claiborne is writing, Atlantean, Aryans, Nordics may be those talked about in the ancient Indian Vedas. Anunnaki might be Nordics as well, if real historic figures. Perhaps some stories of the pagan gods are also Nordics. Could be. Hey, Miss Tessa Marie. Good to see you here, and I'm doing well. Okay, Fast Mama Jama's writing, the secret is not the type of aliens, but the types of humans. Finding the types of aliens will lead to find the types of humans. Yeah, there's Gray Owl. There's a reason I made the thumbnail the way I did, right? I wanted to see if my it's a test. It's a test. I wanted to see if my impressions, my click-through rate, increased through the power of vitamin P. And you can use your imagination to figure out what vitamin P is. Hey, Nathan from the Quantum Show. Good to see you. All right. Well, just make sure you don't play it out loud in case I accidentally curse. Okay. Terrence Willis is writing, great coverage of species. Question, why can't the world governments just say aliens came here on a ship? We don't know why. Let's figure it out together. Thank you. Because hold on. Because they are incompetent, they're greedy, and they're stupid. That's why. Next question. That's my view. That's my personal view. So Miss Tessa Marie is writing, it's kind of funny. My dad's dad was all Swedish, and he was like 6'2", super white, fair skin, and piercing blue eyes. He was very intimidating looking, and his job was being a high school math teacher. Yeah, that could be true too. Roger Claiborne said, smoking hot space babes are actually lizards in disguise, I hear. If they don't break your heart, they might just eat it. Okay. Yeah, maybe. Who knows? So Life 101 is writing, do you know they can change their disguise? Who knows? So Fast Mama John is writing, 21 trillion black budget, it would be impossible to get money out of politics. Yep. Yeah, the old TV series V warned us about them. Yep, Roger, absolutely. Life 101 is saying the Bible says angels can change their disguise. So how do you know their outer appearance is their true appearance? Fair question. You don't. You don't. Chris Kaufman is writing, I have always seen Nordics as being from an earlier lineage of humans who were taken in eons past. They act as a mediator. Travis Walton's encounter is part of this hypothesis. That's a totally legit possible hypothesis. Yeah, I know, Terrence. you're speaking to the choir. This channel should have 500K followers easy. So there was a big scandal in kind of the UFO community about all these people on signal chats and stuff like that that are being, that are basically being run by people in the intelligence community. You can tell from few subscribers that I had that I've never been invited to one of those chats. Okay. And I'm not on any of those chats, but I think it's hilarious that people are taking pictures and, exposing it. But yeah, no one is controlling me right now. So what you see is kind of what you get. Okay, Fred is writing. Hey, Fred. JP whistleblower claimed he saw beings that look like the Nordics in a mission on an underground pyramid. Interesting. Tommy and Kelly Herman. All right, y'all remember that you were amazing. I appreciate that, Tommy and Kelly. Thank you. Hey, Timepiece Adventures. Good to see you. Yes. Did I say Fast Mama Jamma? If I said billion, you're correct. It's trillion. Yeah, it's huge. But I don't think that's like the budget. It just means that's how much they've like siphoned off the system thus far. 21 trillion. But yeah, if I said billion, I am incorrect. Overlander BC, the Nordics will probably be the first aliens to step forward and show themselves publicly because of the most. Yeah, I think that's correct. If they do some sort of disclosure like that. Hey, good to see you, Spiritual Ascension. All right, so Overlander BC is saying, I agree. Nordics, Anunnaki, same thing. Also, Nordics, pagan gods, Nordics, North gods, and so on. I don't know if they're the same as Anunnaki, but it could be, I just noticed all the delete messages show up in chat reply. It is awesome. The delete messages. I cannot delete or at least I have never deleted a message on a chat. I don't even think I know how to do it, to be honest. Let's see. Will I be able to figure this out? I do know. Now I do, but I probably have a language filter. So if somebody's coming in with like 4-letter words, they probably YouTube does. I do have like the basic YouTube moderation function turned on, basic. So if somebody comes in like aggressive or something that could get the channel banned, it definitely goes through a filter. Oh yeah, the Vril girl. Yeah, Maria Orsic was a Nordic supposedly. She was a Czech. She was from Czechoslovakia, or I guess they call it Czechia now. But yeah, Maria Orsic. But she was very psychic. So at least Scott Ian is saying the Vril girl Orsic was a Nordic supposedly, but that doesn't mean that maybe she wasn't. Who knows? All right, so some guy writes, and literally his tag is some guy. I'm not just saying some guy. I just said no, it's some guy. Hi, some guy. According to Ingo Swan, the Nordic type had a bunch of enslaved humans on the moon. Yikes. Johnny Topside is writing, angels can take any form. I don't doubt it. And Spiritual Ascension is saying, we appear in the calmest form for the perceiver. Interesting. Fast Mama Gemma is writing, I watch V on TV, but I don't remember watching the last episode. Amazon sells the show. The last episode is when they like drop all the red dust from airplanes and basically poison the visitors with that like bioweapon. AJ told Joe Rogan the UFO factory is in the he just read that Reddit post. That's what I think that comes from. I mean, who knows? Okay, so Gray Owl's writing, I feel the complete opposite of the Nordics being first in the pool because of logic and all that. I don't know. Definitely weren't first in the pool. Okay. Wait, who can delete? Can you all delete like messages and stuff? That's weird. All right, they seem almost apparitional. Yeah, that's true. Malhau is writing, don't forget the Tuatha De Danann, the Irish she. They appear similar to Nordics. They were beaten by the humans and went underground beneath the she or fairy mounds, but they came from the sky. Interesting. Like how I actually pronounced all that stuff right? A year ago, I wouldn't have gotten she right. Okay, Gray Owl is saying, I have individual insight into the opposite end of the most like us, and they are already living with us, like with us and everything and nothing. Yeah, I believe that. All right. Terrence Willis is saying, question, do you think the Vatican has knowledge of the different species? Lots of hiding stuff there. Thank you. Terrence, 150%. Yes, they know. They probably have more knowledge than our own government on this whole topic because they have 2,000 years of archives and history. All right, Fast Mama Gemma. Also, the big UFO hiding inside a building is in Korea. I thought that came out like a year or two ago that it was in Korea, but there's definitely one in Korea. That's all I'm going to say. Oh, you can delete your own posts. I got it. All right, Overlander BC is writing, the roles of the Norse gods mirror the roles of the Anunnaki, as if they're just retelling a story and making the gods seem the same flavor of their populations at the time of recording their religion. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. We are in their fishbowl. Yeah, it's possible. Woo Riders DG is saying, hey, Sean, I've had a lot going on the last 3 weeks. I'm going to reach out to my family member again and see what his schedule is free. Just check your email in the coming week. Nice. I'm looking forward to it. I know exactly which family member you're talking about, but I'm not going to repeat it for everybody. They can just learn if I am ever able to interview him. I can at least say the sex. Solite US expat, what big UFO in South Korea? Where do I find it? Coltart has said that there's this gigantic UFO that is so big that there's a structure that they built around it because they couldn't move it. But this thing's been in the zeitgeist for like 2 years. Okay, so year after year. Fast Mama Jamma saying the lady who came up with the $21 trillion number says it's a breakaway civilization in control. Yeah, that's Catherine Fitz is the lady that came up with that number. Hey, Sirius, good to see you. Okay, so DS is writing, if you go by the Sarfati Masters hypothesis, it's pretty simple. The Nordic are travelers of time for the most recent part of human development of time travel. Grays, tall whites would be further. Yeah, it's possible. Okay, Gray's Al is saying, I can show any observer who is able to process optical data objectively that some of these far out there style X-ray cats appear to be possibly the very fabric of reality. Okay, so Jalea Jalal is writing, when the special doors were opened at the Vatican, one on each side, were male, appearing tall, very thin, white-skinned, bald, almost skinwalker types who look translucent on camera. Oof. Nelson Fernandez is saying, what if disclosure happens every year? If it doesn't turn out well, they travel back in time and undo it. Yeah, maybe Project Marvel is that thing. Greer also tells the UFO in Korea story. Yeah, I have some knowledge there that I can't ever share. Anyway, I'd like to check it out. Not that I would probably see anything, so I'll just look up Kotart and UFO in Korea. Yeah, you'll find it on Twitter. They're talking about it constantly, but it's real. It's real, guys. It's definitely real. I don't know, but that's well, I'm not going to say anymore. Miss Teresa Marie is saying, do you have any moderators who help you out in the chat when you do live streams? If you ever need anywhere, I'll throw my hat in the ring. No, I don't. I'm doing this myself. I don't have enough volume yet, but yeah, I'll keep in mind, Miss Teresa or Miss Tessa Marie, because yeah, I don't have enough volume yet to really do that. So Overlander BC is, I agree that there's a breakaway civilization enacting some crazy ish at the expense of, yeah, or just some transnational group. Yeah, Greer the plant, the paid op feeding distortion, spiritual ascensions writing. Yep. Yeah, agree, Gray Al. All right, Skyhorse Price is saying, watching the way our quote unquote leaders, I like how you quote leaders, are behaving, the policies and decisions they are implementing, I can only conclude that there's a probably small but extremely connected group that wants nuclear war. Yeah, I think so. I think that's reasonable. So Danny Jones had a guy in the show that thinks Greer has connections to. Yeah, I've seen that one. Thank you, Johnny Topside. I appreciate it. I just wish it would grow faster. I mean, it's like growing like molasses, but I appreciate that you, Johnny Topside writes. Love your channel, Sean. All right. So DS said, I did an AI analysis of the debunking of the Billy Meyer case, and it's mostly by Cal Korff, who doesn't come across as trustworthy at all. Oh, I've heard that name before. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to comment on him because you get into I interviewed somebody who had some interactions with that guy, and it's you just don't want to engage. Doc Kadenpa is writing, do you think cloning body snatching is a thing? How would we know if it's not just talking to a beautiful Nordic person that's been snatched? You don't. All right. Let's get back to our normally scheduled program. I'm surprised I didn't lose anybody. I actually gained people on this, but let's get back to where we were in the order. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about Overlander BC. Kind of inadvertently foreshadowed this, let's just say. But we're going to talk about the spiritual and mythological parallels. One reason the Nordic alien concept captivates people is that it resonates with imagery from humanity's deep past. Tall, radiant beings coming down from the heavens to guide or watch over mankind. That's a storyline as old as civilization itself. UFO believers and ancient astronaut theorists, oh boy, have drawn many connections between modern Nordic ETs and the deities and demigods of world mythologies, as well as figures from religious and esoteric traditions. So, as Overlander BC foreshadowed, Norse mythology. It's almost poetic that we call these aliens Nordic because it invites comparison to the Norse pantheon of gods, Odin, Thor, Freyr, and others described in Viking sagas. Some writers have speculated that the Norse Asir gods could have been actual ancient alien visitors with advanced technology interpreted as magic. For instance, the god Thor, with his mighty hammer that brought thunder, might have been an extraterrestrial with a powerful energy weapon, and his legendary strength and stature mirror the physical impressiveness attributed to Nordic ETs. Odin, often depicted as a wise old man with one eye roaming Earth in disguise, could be seen as a parallel to an alien observer blending in among humans. These comparisons are admittedly fantastical, but they underscore a point to someone in the past. A Palladian visitor might well have been remembered as a shining god from the sky. Even the realm of Asgard, home of the Norse gods, accessible via a rainbow bridge, have been whimsically compared to another planet reachable by some kind of wormhole, the Bifrost, as a metaphor for space portal. While mainstream scholars don't endorse these interpretations, the imagery lines up tall, noble beings from the heavens with a paternal interest in humanity. Now we go to Greek and other European myths. Some thoughts arise with Greek mythology. The Greek gods often look human and in form and interact or meddled in human affairs. Could Zeus or Apollo, often depicted as golden-haired or towering, have been misunderstood extraterrestrials? Some ancient astronaut theorists like Erich von Daniken famously suggested that titans and men of renown in myths were alien visitors. The myth of gods interbreeding with humans, creating heroes like Hercules, parallels modern tales of Nordic aliens allegedly creating hybrid children with Earth people. A theme in some contactee and abductee reports. For example, the story of Elizabeth Clara, who claims she bore a child with a handsome alien from Alpha Centauri, Celtic and Germanic legends about the Tuatha De Danann, a race of tall, radiant beings in Irish lore, or the elves and light elves in Norse stories that have been tied to the idea of an ancient Nordic alien presence as well. Those mythical folk were often described as fair-haired, powerful, and coming from distant lands or worlds. Angels and biblical beings. Many experiencers actually describe Nordics in angelic terms. Abductees have woken up convinced the tall blonde beings who confront them on a spaceship was literally an angel or a representative of God. In the Bible and other religious texts, angels are typically depicted as humanoid messengers of light, sometimes with dazzling white clothing or even glowing countenances. Guys, can you please hold on? Just give me a moment. All right, sorry about that, y'all. All right, we're just going back to continue. Okay. Many experiencers actually describe Nordics in angelic terms. Abductees have woken up convinced that the tall blonde being who comforted them on a spaceship was literally an angel or a representative of God. In the Bible and other religious texts, angels are typically depicted as humanoid messengers of light, sometimes with dazzling white clothing or even glowing countenances. Notably, in the biblical accounts where angels appear to humans, the humans often mistake them for ordinary men at first, implying they look human, just perhaps more glorious or otherworldly in presence. This parallels Nordics. The parallel to Nordics is clear. They're generally benevolent messengers, and some contactees, like Orfeo Angelucci in the 1950s, explicitly described his alien encounters in almost biblical language. He met beings of pure light who gave him spiritual insights, an experience he likened to meeting angels. Even the Book of Enoch from apocryphal biblical literature speaks of watchers, heavenly beings who watched over Earth, taught early humans various arts, and in some versions even interbred with humans, creating creating a race of hybrid giants, Nephilim. While the Watcher story turned sour, they fell from grace. The initial concept of watchful guardians from the sky resonates with how Nordics present themselves as concerned overseers of Earth's welfare. Some modern believers actually refer to Nordics as a type of angelic star being. In fact, a strain of New Age spirituality often equates certain archangels with extraterrestrials. For example, Archangel Michael is sometimes claimed to be a Pleiadian commander in channeled messages, blending biblical and galactic imagery. All right, another area that we can explore is ascended masters and theosophy. We touched earlier on theosophy and the idea of ascended masters, enlightened beings guiding humanity. In the late 19th and early 20th century, occult teachers like Helena Blavatsky and Guy Ballard spoke of secret masters, often of great beauty and wisdom, sometimes living in remote mountains or even other planets. Blavatsky mentioned some masters living on Venus or other celestial places. The Great White Brotherhood, where white referred to light, not race, in theosophy, comprised enlightened beings that could very easily be compared to Nordics in retrospect. They were described as tall, radiant, and supernal. Fast forward to the UFO contactee era. Many of those early contactees essentially replaced the Ascended Masters with Space Brothers, as noted by scholars. For instance, George Adamski initially conducted seances and claimed contact with Tibetan Ascended Masters in the 1930s. But after 1952, He simply said his cosmic friends had taken over that role. Yet their teachings were identical to the old ones. This is a revealing communication. The Nordic aliens of UFO lore appear or often dispense the same kind of wisdom as prior mystical teachers about universal love, spiritual wisdom, and cosmic law. Some New Age channeled material explicitly ties the two together, suggesting the Ascended Masters are working with the Space Brothers, or they are one and the same. A group called Ashtar Command, very popular in channeled UFO circles since the 1970s, speaks of an interstellar federation led by Lord Ashtar, typically envisioned as a tall, blue-eyed, golden-haired being in a jumpsuit, basically a Nordic alien, who also has a Christ-like or archangel-like presence. Ashtar and his colleagues, like Hatan, Manka, etc., in that lore, often deliver spiritual messages through channelers, much like the metaphysical platitudes Adamski's Orthon delivered, but updated for a spacefaring context. Additionally, there are indigenous prophecies. So another fascinating parallel comes from various indigenous cultures around the world that have legends of pale or white spirit beings or star people. The Hopi tribe of North America, for example, have a prophecy of the coming of Pahana, or true white brother, a sacred figure who is returning during the Hopi end times, coming from the east or from the stars in some interpretations, to help purify the world. Some have speculated this true white brother could be a metaphor for a Nordic alien or Palladian teacher returning at a critical moment. The Hopi also talk about Kachinas, spiritual beings from the stars that sometimes took human form to instruct the tribes. In Mesoamerican lore, there are the Viracocha of the Incas and Quetzalcoatl of the Aztecs, described as light-skinned, bearded gods who arrived mysteriously and imparted knowledge. Viracocha even was depicted as tall and wearing white robes. Although these could have been early European visitors, misremembered, ancient astronaut proponents love to say that these were ancient Nordic ETs making contact long ago. Ancient India's Vedic texts describe devas, gods, who had vimanas, flying craft, and sometimes interacted with humans. Some devas are depicted with fair or shining skins, while Indian beings are often more exotic in appearance, with multiple arms, etc., that are likely symbolic. There are enough descriptions of radiant humanoid gods to draw a line toward the idea of luminous extraterrestrial visitors. In essence, the mythic and spiritual parallels serve to give the Nordic alien narrative a sense of familiarity and validation, as if to say, see, people all over the world throughout history have encountered these beings under one name or another. Believers argue that Nordic NHIs might have been active in guiding human civilization from the beginning, appearing as gods or angels to seed our cultures with certain knowledge, astronomy, agriculture, moral law, etc. For example, some ancient astronaut theorists think the civilizing gods like Ones in Sumeria, a fishman teacher, or Thoth in Egypt could have been ETs. While those don't match the Nordic image directly, the concept of extraterrestrial influence is in play. It's important, however, to apply a caveat. Modern skeptics often observe that we humans tend to project our own ideas onto unknowns. The ancients may have mythologized normal events or encounters, or simply invented gods to explain the cosmos. Likewise, modern contactees may be projecting archetypal images like the wise elder, the guardian angel, the beautiful seductress, etc., onto mysterious experiences or even dreams. The Nordic alien might be, in psychological terms, an archetype of the higher self or wise old man woman that emerges in a form our contemporary culture interprets as an alien rather than an angel. The psychological perspective this psychological perspective doesn't necessarily negate people's experiences, but offers a different lens to understand why so many disparate people describe similar tall, glowing figures. Still, even stepping back, it is downright fascinating how consistent the Nordic archetype is across time and space. Whether it's a god, an angel, an ascended master, or an alien, the thread is a tall, human-like, enlightened being from the sky, concerned with our development. Perhaps one could even say the Nordics are a modern myth sewn from ancient patterns, serving a perennial human desire to know that we are not alone and that someone wiser is looking out for us. All right, let's go into Nordic agenda and motivations. Throughout all these stories, contactee, abductee, whistleblower, or spiritual, one question looms. Why are the Nordics here? What are their motivations regarding humanity? Different sources provide different emphases, but a few common themes emerge consistently. All right, the first reason, guidance and teaching. The predominant claim is that Nordic NHI see themselves as guides or older siblings to humanity. They're often portrayed as having a benevolent agenda of helping us evolve, spiritually, socially, perhaps even biologically. From the Space Brothers lectures of the 50s to New Age channeled messages today, the Nordics repeatedly urged humans to pursue peace, harmony, and higher consciousness. They warn against violence, nuclear war, environmental destruction, and spiritual stagnation. In many contact accounts, Nordics express that humanity is at a crossroads and needs to overcome our greed and tribalism to join a larger cosmic community. In some narratives, they're here to gently prepare us for eventual open contact when we're ready, acting as mentors from afar. Their communications often emphasize that humans have great potential, even latent psychic abilities or soul capacities. But we must choose love over fear to unlock them. This casts the Nordics in a role almost like cosmic life coaches or enlightenment gurus. As one researcher summarized among believers, Nordic aliens are, quote, often associated with spiritual growth and love and act as protectors for the experiencers. All right, so the second reason or agenda they might have is observation and non-interference. Hand in hand with the guide role is a curious restraint. Nordics are frequently described as following a non-intervention policy. Think Star Trek's Prime Directive. They watch and seldom interfere overtly in human affairs. Even when they give warnings, they rarely step in to stop us from doing foolish things. Although they didn't halt our nuclear tests or prevent wars or prevent us from dropping 2 nuclear weapons on Japan, but that's neither here nor there. This can be interpreted as respecting our free will or sovereignty as a developing world. One contactee said the Nordics told him they have a strict code. They can't directly solve our problems for us, but they can offer counsel and occasionally nudge events in a favorable direction if asked. It's akin to a parent letting a child make mistakes to learn, intervening only if the child is about to stick a fork into a light socket. Some insiders claim there actually have been interventions, like allegedly certain nuclear missile tests were mysteriously shut down by UFOs in the 1960s and 70s, which some attribute to Nordic ETs sending a message that we will not let you destroy yourselves, though others attribute it to grays or just unknown UAP tech. For the most part, though, Nordics and stories are patient observers. They might contact individuals, especially those who seek them out via meditation or are spiritually attuned, rather than making grand public landings. A common refrain in channel messages is that they await a time when humanity collectively shows readiness for more open contact, often pegged to improvements in our global unity or consciousness level. All right, a third potential agenda could be protecting Earth and its life. Many Nordics express a strong concern for Earth's environment and survival. This aligns with their anti-nuclear stance. Contactee after contactee in the 50s and 60s came back with messages about caring for our planet's ecosystem, and not polluting or blowing up the biosphere. In later years, as ecological awareness grew on Earth, some claim the Nordics were even guiding our inspiration to protect nature. They allegedly worry that if we ruin Earth, it could have ripple effects beyond. One contact message said something like, if you destroy your world, it causes imbalance in this sector of the galaxy. They sometimes refer to Earth as a particularly beautiful and rare gem that must be preserved. This caretaker attitude gives them the epithet some use as a gardener race. One charming concept from New Age circles is that Nordics are here to assist Gaia, the spirit of Earth, in her ascension, and humanity's awakening is part of that. All very poetic, if unprovable. Even in abduction cases, when Nordics show up, they sometimes relay messages about looming environmental catastrophe if we don't change our ways. A number of abductees in the 1980s reported being shown vivid telepathic visions of Earth devastated by pollution or nuclear war. While often grays were present, some later interpreted that perhaps Nordics orchestrated these warnings through the abduction as a tough love tactic. A fourth motivation, or a fourth agenda, might be mediation and diplomacy. If one believes the expansive lore of multiple alien species interacting with Earth, then the Nordics often come across as the diplomats or peacekeepers. Some conspiracists claim Nordics have liaised with governments to try to broker peaceful policies, like the Eisenhower episode. Others think Nordics are here to ensure that hostile species, like certain reptilians, do not overstep certain bounds with humanity. A dramatic version suggests an ongoing shadow war, where Nordic-aligned forces battle darker ET forces, largely out of human sight, to secure a positive future for Earth. Again, this is highly speculative and mostly sourced from individuals' claims, like those from secret space program lore. So, probably not true. If one listens to someone like Corey Good, I don't listen to someone like Corey Good, I would completely discount that, or Elena Denon, the both of whom are contemporary figures claiming insider knowledge, they'd say that Nordic-looking ETs from the Pleiades and related groups are active in something called the Galactic Federation of Worlds, working to liberate humanity from manipulation. It's essentially Space Brothers 2.0, with more Star Wars flavor. The key idea: Nordics want us to join a peaceful interstellar coalition once we mature enough, and they're helping to neutralize threats that might hinder that destiny. A fifth agenda might be just scientific or genetic interest. Though far less often than Greys, a few stories suggest Nordics have an interest in human genetics or our unique qualities. The famous starseed concept in New Age belief posits that many humans actually carry incarnated souls from other worlds, often Palladians, essentially that Nordics might be seeding their own people among us to subtly raise our vibration from within. Additionally, some abductees report being told they have a Nordic parent, or that they themselves are of mixed heritage. One interesting case is Stan Romanek, who controversially claimed he fathered hybrid children with a Nordic-looking alien female. Photos he presented of a supposed hybrid girl showed a child with strikingly large eyes, but otherwise human features, possibly echoing a Nordic gray mix. Romanek's credibility later collapsed under evidence of hoaxing, but his case had all the tropes. The idea of an alien race close enough to us to interbreed and perhaps revitalize their genetics as ours. Some lore suggests the Nordics see us as family, that ancient ETs may be them seeded Earth with human life in the first place, hence why we look like them, and now they check in to see how the experiment is going. In such scenarios, their motivation might simply be kinship. We are literally their distant cousins or even descendants, and they have a vested interest in our survival and ascension. This shades into a larger ancient aliens theory that all human civilization was kickstarted by star people. And finally, the sixth agenda, or potential agenda, could just be selfless versus self-interested agendas. Are the Nordics completely altruistic, or do they have their own agendas? Most contactees would say the former, that they're altruistic almost to a fault, often described as having moved beyond ego and conflict in their own evolution. However, A few cautionary tales exist. For example, the Aldebaran Nazi connection theory posits that a Nordic-type alien group might have fed the Germans advanced tech in the 1940s for dubious reasons, though this is extremely speculative and conflated with fiction. The TV series The Event had a plot like this, interestingly. Some abductees have described Nordic beings with cold affect or a sense of superiority, implying not all are cuddly space siblings. Whistleblower William Tompkins claimed that Nordic females embedded themselves as secretaries in aerospace companies to help the U.S., which sounds altruistic on the surface, but why remain so covert? A skeptical view could be if Nordics are real, they might be playing a long game to subtly influence us in ways beneficial to them as well, perhaps preparing us to be reliable allies or preventing our problems from spilling over into space. But these more cynical interpretations are minor in the literature. The overwhelming portrayal of Nordic motives is protective and uplifting. To illustrate their typical messaging, here's a direct flavor from a contact case. In Billy Meyer's extensive contact notes, the Palladian women, Semjace, or actually, I guess he would speak German, so it would be Semyasa, often emphasizes that they do not interfere in our politics or religions, but they wish to teach the truth so humans can evolve in consciousness. She scolds Meyer about our warlike ways, saying we must learn peace, love, true knowledge, and wisdom to avoid destroying ourselves. In one famous quote, Semyasa allegedly said, "We have never been here to lead you, but to offer guidance. To be effective, it must be your choice to create a better world." Whether Meyer truly heard this or composed it, it nicely encapsulates the supposed Nordic ethos. Not leaders, but guides, not saviors, but inspirers. Another example, George Adamski's Space Brothers told him that humanity was entering a new cosmic age and that our mental vibrations would have to be lifted to join other planetary societies. They warned that misuse of atomic energy could disrupt the balance of the universe, a very grandiose claim implying our actions on Earth have cosmic significance. Finally, returning to how experiencers feel about these motives, many contactees and abductees who encounter Nordics report a profound sense of mission afterwards. They feel compelled to spread the aliens' message, often at personal cost, as they might be ridiculed. They describe the Nordics in almost reverent terms, like one might describe meeting a saint or a prophet. It's common to hear phrases like, "They have exuded pure love. I sense that they were here to help us, not hurt us." Or "They have a grand plan for Earth's future, one of unity and peace, if only we'll listen." This has made some skeptics label the whole Nordic alien phenomenon as quasi-religious or cultish, with the Nordics as substitute savior figures for a secular age. While there are certainly cult-like offshoots, some groups literally worship Palladian beings or follow channel directives unquestioningly. Many experiencers simply integrate the message by advocating for kindness, environmentalism, and social cooperation, arguably positive things regardless of source. In summation, the Nordic agenda, if one composites all the sources, appears to be guide humanity away from self-destruction, towards spiritual awakening, and ultimately into fellowship with other advanced beings. They're portrayed as altruistic mentors who have taken an interest in us, possibly because of ancient ties or simply compassion. Whether one takes that as comforting or fantastical, it certainly provides a hopeful counterpoint to the more frightening alien narratives out there. As one Gaia article succinctly put it, Nordics are deeply concerned with the spiritual evolution of humanity. That could almost be a mission statement from them. All right, in the next segment, we're going to talk about Nordics versus other alien races, a comparative glimpse. Throughout this journey, we've mentioned other types of alleged extraterrestrials, grays, reptilians, tall whites, etc. For context and clarity, let's briefly compare the Nordics to some of the other reported NHI groups to highlight the role differences often ascribed to them. All right, so Nordic aliens, obviously, as we detailed, they are typically seen as benevolent, human-appearing guides that communicate through telepathy, emphasize spiritual values, and have a non-confrontational approach. Physically, they resemble us, tall, often blonde, very similar to idealized humans. They purportedly want to help us teach, or want to help or teach, not conquer. Encounters with Nordics are often reported as calming or awe-inspiring. They sometimes work behind the scenes and can blend into society undetected if they choose. Gray aliens. These are small, 3 to 4 feet tall, big-headed, black-eyed beings that dominate abduction accounts since the 1960s. Grays are typically portrayed as scientific and emotionally distant. Their agenda seems to center on genetic experimentation and study of humans. Abductions often involve medical exams, sample taking, and even creation of hybrid offspring. Communication from Greys is telepathic too, but experiencers often feel the Greys lack empathy or don't understand human pain. They're usually described as hairless with grayish skin and spindly limbs, quite a contrast to the vibrant, muscular Nordics. In many narratives, Greys are subservient to or controlled by a higher authority. Some say a Grey collective mind, others say by reptilians, or even by Nordics, depending on the lore. Unlike Nordics, who champion peace openly, Greys rarely give philosophical messages. They're more enigmatic. People who encounter Greys often have PTSD-like after effects, whereas those who meet Nordics might come back inspired. It's as if Greys are the technicians and Nordics are the diplomats, teachers. Interestingly, some believe the Greys themselves might be a dying or artificial species seeking renewal through human genes, which is why they're so busy in labs, and perhaps the Nordics are overseeing a hybrid program for some larger purpose, all speculative. The vibe difference is stark. A room with Greys feels cold and clinical. A room with Nordics feels light and reassuring, at least according to the lore. All right, then they're the reptilian aliens. These are typically depicted as tall, humanoid, reptile-like beings, scaly skin, sometimes with tails or vertical slit pupils. In conspiracy and some abduction accounts, reptilians often play the villains. They are accused of being power-hungry, manipulative, and even malevolent toward humans. Conspiracy theorist David Icke famously popularized the idea that shape-shifting reptilian aliens disguise themselves as human leaders to control society. Whether one takes that seriously or not, in UFO lore, reptilians are the polar opposite of Nordics. Where Nordics promote love and unity, reptilians are said to sow conflict, feed off negative energy, or literal human flesh in some horrifying accounts. They're often depicted as physically stronger and more aggressive. Contactees rarely, if ever, have warm fuzzies about reptilians. Fear and domination are the themes. Some narratives cast Nordics and reptilians as age-old enemies, the galactic good versus evil. For instance, a common story is that eons ago, a war between reptilian empires and the Nordic Palladian civilizations occurred, and that conflict echoes in various ways on Earth. Some tie this to mythic wars like between Titans and Olympians or the biblical war in heaven. This is highly mythologized, of course, but if Nordics are our guardian angels, reptilians are painted as the devils. One interesting twist, there are few accounts of benevolent reptilians and bad Nordics, like Aryan aliens working with Nazis. But these are minority reports. The majority of UFO lore clearly biases Nordics equals good, reptilians equals bad. All right, then there are the mantid or insectoid aliens. These are less commonly discussed in pop culture, but quite frequently reported by abductees. They appear as tall, often 7+ feet, insect-like beings, resembling praying mantises. Usually they are encountered aboard gray craft, seemingly in charge. Abductees sometimes see a mantid observing the procedures dispassionately. They are enigmatic. Some experiencers feel a strange spiritual aura from them. Others are terrified by their insectoid appearance. They don't correspond to human archetypes as neatly as Nordics do. In some regression hypnosis transcripts, people say the mantids are interested in our souls or in orchestrating reincarnation cycles. Very bizarre and mystical stuff. How do they compare to Nordics? In lore, mantids are like aloof scientists or mystics, not particularly warm. Nordics, by contrast, present as compassionate and deeply familiar since they look like us. There aren't many stories of mantids delivering uplifting messages. They're usually behind the scenes directors and abductions. So one could say Nordics interact with heart and mind, mantids with cold intellect. And then tall whites and other human-like ET variants. There's sometimes overlap or confusion between terms. Tall whites, as per Charles Hill, share some traits with Nordics, but are described with a twist. Very pale, almost chalky white skin, and possibly spindlier. Hall's tall whites also had a family structure and could be dangerous if threatened. Some classify them as a subtype of Nordic since they're tall and humanoid. Others consider them separate. Another term that pops up is Lyrans, an alleged ancient human-like race said to be the progenitors of the Nordics, often described as even taller and sometimes with red or dark hair. In general, all these human ET types, Palladians, Lyrans, Venusians, tall whites, etc., are lumped together in contrast to the grays and reptilians. They sort of form an alliance of we look like you and share common values in the lore. Comparing them helps highlight that Nordics feel a unique niche. They are the reassuring face of the alien phenomenon. When people say aliens might be friendly or spiritually advanced, they're usually envisioning Nordics or something similar, not little grays. Nordics humanize the cosmic landscape quite literally. Even psychologists who study abduction experiences note that if a person encounters both types in a narrative, they'll often gravitate to the Nordic as the one they feel comfortable with or even form an emotional bond with, whereas the grays are seen as tools or drones. From a storytelling perspective, Nordics are almost like the parental figures, grays the lab techs, reptilians the dark antagonists, and mantids the inscrutable observers. Each race serves a function in a kind of grand mythos about why aliens are here and what they want. By understanding those differences, we see clearly what Nordics represent: hopes, guidance, and kinship, as opposed to fear, exploitation, or conquest. As we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Nordic non-human intelligences, one thing is abundantly clear. The lore of the Nordics is as much about us as it is about them. Whether these tall telepathic space brothers truly hail from the Pleiades, or whether they're an elaborate amalgam of human hopes, fears, and cultural motifs, the stories we've explored speak to a yearning in the human spirit, a yearning that we are not alone in the universe, that someone wiser and kinder is out there looking for us, maybe even watching over our tumultuous journey here on Earth. We've traveled from the sun-baked deserts of California with George Adamski chatting up a Venusian to the Swiss countryside where Billy Meyer snapped photos of Palladian beam ships, to the logging woods of Arizona where Travis Walton met luminous humanoids aboard a UFO. We delved into secret bunkers and presidential meetings, if the rumors are to be believed, where Nordics tried to broker peace. We traced their echoes back into ancient myth and religion, where perhaps their silhouettes can be seen in the form of gods and angels. We compared them to the other strange characters in the UFO pantheon and saw how uniquely the Nordics consistently wear the white hat, the benevolent mediators, the cosmic guardians. For every claim, we noted the caveats. These accounts come from personal testimonies, not empirical science. Mainstream science, of course, finds no evidence of blonde aliens zipping over from the Seven Sisters to give sermons on love and light. But listening to these narratives in aggregate, it's evident that the figure of the Nordic alien has been a powerful modern myth that inspires many people. As with any myth, it can be taken to extremes. We saw hints of how Nordic idealism can shade into troubling territory if co-opted by supremacist ideas, or how blind belief in channel entities can become cult-like. Yet at its core, the Space Brother mythos has largely advocated for positive ideas: peace, unity, environmental stewardship, and personal growth. Could there be a kernel of truth to it? Might there actually be advanced extraterrestrials who resemble us, perhaps even related to us, quietly guiding humanity? It sounds like science fiction, yet not entirely impossible in the grand scheme of the cosmos. After all, the universe is vast, and life might come in forms uncannily familiar or wildly different. The Nordic alien hypothesis suggests a comforting answer to Fermi's paradox. Where is everyone? Maybe everyone has been here all along, gently nudging from the sidelines, waiting for the right time to introduce themselves. It's a thought that brings wonder, even if one remains skeptical. In the end, whether the Nordics are benevolent cosmic teachers, watchful guardians, galactic meddlers, or simply figments of our collective imagination, they occupy a firm place in UFO lore and the human imagination. They remind us of our highest ideals, where we might become in the future if we overcome our worst impulses. In some accounts, the Nordics even claim to be future versions of humanity, coming back to ensure their own past stays on course. Obviously, a time travel twist. And this is kind of with going the Michael Masters, Dr. Sarfati sort of themes. The idea in itself is poetic that our future wiser selves would care enough to reach back and guide us. As a watcher, listener, and thinker, you might ask, what do I make of all this? That's for you to decide. Perhaps as a Gaia article teasingly put it after recounting these stories, do you think humanity is close to realizing our collective ascension, or do you feel that extraterrestrial intervention is a necessary step in our evolution? Or is this all an intriguing hoax? You decide. So one thing's for sure, the next time you find yourself under a clear night sky, gazing at the twinkle of the Pleiades cluster, you might feel a slight chill of possibility. Could there be friendly eyes looking back? Many experiencers would smile and say, absolutely, and they've been waiting for us to say hello back. Until that day, the tales of the Nordics will continue to entertain, inspire, and provoke curiosity about our place in this vast cosmos. Thank you for joining this exploration. Stay open-minded, keep your feet on the ground, and maybe your heart among the stars. And as the old contactee sign-off goes, may we meet in the light of a better world. All right. That's it. That's all for the prepared comments this time. And that gave me plenty of content to get through. So, although I'm now coming back to the comments and I'm seeing 117 that I have not addressed yet. Ooh, it's going to be a fast one. I just got to find where I started. Oops, that's not helpful. Oh, come on, where is this? Just bear with me. It's going to take me some time to find the... All right. No, I didn't find it. All right, I got it. All right. Spiritual Ascension is asking if you see Trump confirmed on Truth Social that Biden was a clone. It's pretty much confirming. Who knows? All right, Overlander BC is saying, I actually missed most of this show. Once it ends up, I'm going to loop back to the beginning and listen to the first part. You can listen to it now, actually. I mean, just jump into the very beginning. All right, if they guide us, then what guides them? Good question, Johnny Topside. Okay. Overlander BC is saying, didn't Trump actually drop some stuff about Biden being a clone on Truth Social today? I heard that on someone's channel. Was like, what the? I haven't seen that. I have no idea. Overlander BC. Yeah, Sirius is writing Huggin, Munnin. Those are Odin's two ravens. Alpha D, I have no idea. Mugwort, don't know. Wormwood is the in the Book of Revelation, and then Myrrh, come guest here. Okay. Fast Mama Gemma saying, is Elizabeth April had a few videos about Biden being a clone. Okay. Doc Kudenpa is saying, I'm from New Zealand. There are a lot of indigenous Maori mythology around pale skinned, blonde haired, blue eyed people, amongst other races. Interesting. Spiritual Ascension is writing, the Nordics are offshoots of other races that had no choice but to leave their homelands. Scott Iron is like saying what happened. I don't know what that hold on. Okay, Overlander BC is saying, in my opinion, the Rainbow Bridge is an ability to move through a spectrum of frequencies and make it to any other realms parallel to this one. Yeah, it could be. It's a good. Roger Claiborne is ready. He's got up. I guess this one I got up to shut down the noise that I was hearing here. Yeah, I tried to be back fast. Spiritual Ascension is saying, I remember something similar. Apparently, I had an incarnation in Alpha Centauri. Gray Owl is saying, some of the scholarly accounts of the Jinn align with astonishing accuracy with contemporary physics models of UFOs, such as plasma. A cosmologist in the 13th century describes Jinn as aerial animals with transparent bodies that can assume various forms. They believe that the Jinn could only be seen when their bodies were condensed. Yeah, they could be sentient plasmoids, Who knows? Yeah, plasma. That's right. Jalal Jalal is saying there is Alpha Centauri and Rigel Centaurus. Hadar, one is sun star system, or three sun system, the other a brown dwarf system. Okay. Overlander BC is saying there's dark matter as well as dark energy. Seems to me the jinns manifest themselves by utilizing both. Who knows? Okay. Okay. Well, you know where the term Finord came from. I have no idea. Dakendo, I struggle. Doc Kadenpa. I don't know. Doc Kadenpa. I don't know. I don't know where Finord came from. Okay. Spiritual Ascension is saying, I was also told I had an incarnation in Arcturus. Yeah. What? Overlander BC says he doesn't like the Jinn. Bugosphere is real. You do know that you can buy drones that are like little orbs, as long as they have like an air vent, right? They can fly. So it could just be conventional terrestrial technology, because those things have like air intake valves, or they just like they have holes that allow them to access the air. Oh, I missed that. Yeah, Scott Ian. That's very nice. Gin and juice, laid back. Anyway, Gray Owl is writing the worst space builder philosophy put forward. They're here to save us, man. We don't need saving, it would seem, however. We do need saving, it would seem, however. All right. All right. So Terrace Willis has a question. Of all the species, sizes, colors, angels, etc., why does every civilization ever at some point say beings came from the sky and imparted knowledge? Thank you, Greyway. 100%. Thank you. Because there's something to all these stories. I can't pretend to know what they are, but there's definitely something to all these stories. Okay. Breezy is saying, Jalea, I'm curious to know if I had any previous incarnation elsewhere. Overlander BC is saying, I don't think any aliens are here to save us either, any more than grizzlies are here to save us. Or we're here to save grizzlies. Okay. Dakudenpa is saying, Kashmir Shave Visions Sponda, the throb of the universe of Siva consciousness. Abhinava Gupta's Tanktraloka framers as its Udita Sponda. I have no idea what that means. Sorry, folks, if I'm like racing through, but I'm just trying to get through all of this. Okay, so DS is writing Paola Harris could be criticized in her research. Excellent research, in my opinion, but she strikes me as anything but a liar. She reported an encounter with Yeah, on Terrell, a 10-foot Nordic esque at Mount Shasta. Yeah, I had Grant Cameron on the show where he talked about a lot of that. Okay, Terrence Willis has another question. Of all the species agendas and types, they do discuss what kinds of them do you suspect they aren't telling us about? Thank you. Definitely the reptilians, but I think there's other stuff too. There's stuff that is like blob like that I've seen in remote viewing, but I've also had people who have security clearances kind of confirm that in a way, but I'll just leave it at that. People who have security clearances who you have heard of. All right, so DS Terrence, either reptilians or the Holloman big nose grays, whether or not is real, I have no idea. Okay. Mm. Alpha Draco saying, I love the Nordics, Euros, and their descendants. Yeah. The Anunnaki didn't create us. Victoria Emmerich is saying, got hit by electricity, near death experience. There's only a small piece of you down here. The rest of you is upstairs in a higher plane of existence. Yeah, I believe that. Overlander BG or BC is saying, I think the bulk of our DNA that was mixed into early developed Earthborn humanoids comes from Nordic samples. Mm. Sorry, I'm just racing through. Gray Owl's writing, I would wager that amidst all of these DNA engineering strategies between species and political strategy, there exists true love stories where bonds tie with more significance than physical difference. Hey, Kelly V. Jalea Jalal saying grays are extremely radioactive, genetically ruined. Overlander BC is writing, I've seen a lot of stories of Nordics working with humans, working with reptilians and mantid and tall grays and small grays. It seems the blue ones are not as involved with the others. Gray House, like the blue ones are Sean's favorites. Myself and Roger Claymore rocket old school Captain Kirk head right for the green. All right, Tangish Willis is saying, question, how can we believe any of these species or races when we can't even believe our human leaders? Yeah, I mean, through experience. Unless you see them, you'll never know. You'll never know. Because we certainly can't believe anything people in power say. Okay. So late U.S. expat Reddit may have identified that UFO in South Korea. It's south of the Han River on Mount Bebong. There's an observatory there. On Google Earth, it says there's an army garrison next to it. Okay. Solite US expat is saying Egg Reardon was given that square on Mars as a target. It's on his YouTube channel, parts 1 and 2. Oh, Moloko Plus. All right. Terrence Wills was saying last question. Many races, many species isn't new. What is new is that it's being talked about by actual friggin' Congress members. Now, why do you think that is? And who's for summer 20? I don't know what hose for your summer 2025 means. Thank you. Um, I really don't know. I've lost all hope of disclosure actually coming from the government. What I've heard in circles is that they're not going to disclose until most people believe it's true, and then they just say, "Hey, this is true," and people are like, "Yeah, we know." And I don't think we're there yet. So that's what I've heard. So hopes for 2025 and guests. Thank you again. That's just from Terrence Wills. Um, I mean, hope. I can hope to reach 100,000 subscribers. Is it possible? Yeah, I've seen like really super dog shit channels get there long before me. Is it probable? No. But that's my hope. In terms of guests, I don't know. I'm like barely keeping my head above water right now. I just kind of get guests as whenever I can. I still like to get Mario Woods. He always responds, but it's never the right time. I'd also like to get I can't remember his name. Anyway, but yeah, I can't think of anybody specifically. I have never remote viewed, or I don't think, because I haven't been formally trained in it. Terrence Willis' great pronunciations tonight on a hot mess express subject. Thank you. Hit the like. Yeah, yeah. I swear you guys like keep me honest about this because I should be asking for it, but you do a better job at it than I do. So if you're enjoying this live stream, please hit like, subscribe, and share. Share it. That helps. Solite US expat. I think you shared this on not this, but you've shared a few things recently on Before It News. I can tell because I see spikes. Yeah, I think it was the Nathaniel, one or both of the Nathaniel Gillis episodes. So I appreciate that. Um, oh, I just lost my place. Oh, all right, here we go. Solite U.S. expat. Writes, I'm concerned about the recent strike on the Russian bombers. I'm sure Putin is going to retaliate very hard back at Ukraine. So Solite, I spoke about it earlier in at the very beginning of the podcast. I'm even more concerned that you are because he's definitely going to strike back at Ukraine. That goes without saying. He's going to strike back at the US or the UK for sure. I would. I mean, you don't attack nuclear assets. Those were strategic nuclear assets. So, and I guarantee we were behind it. All right, Nick D is saying try getting Darius J. Wright as a guest if possible. I can look into it. Gray Owl is saying, Sean, what about the cat that researched our perceptions of reality and certain chem drugs actually remove blinders and show us deeper reality that always exists, but we are blind to it? If you can tell me his name, but I definitely don't have him scheduled. Scott Ian said, I heard you wrong. I thought you said you'd RV'd the blobs. No, no, no. It was like Daz's team, Daz Smith, his team. Oh, and Spiritual Ascension is saying Darius Wright is another paid op. Okay, Solite US Expat said, though, yeah, those were the ones, but it didn't get enough views. It was a little less than 300 people viewed that article. I have no idea what's up with. Yeah, but that 300, among other sources, it's still, it like I could still see it spike very quickly. So that's still great. Yeah, I have to be formally trained Overlander BC. So yeah, I hope to do some stuff too, but I'm so overwhelmed. I have 3 jobs. I have this. I have there's like a local university I kind of do contract work for, and then I have the day job. So I literally just never stop working. All right, I think I got through everything. We're about a minute over, but I got through all the comments so far, and I am absolutely exhausted. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week next week. Enjoy the last bit of your weekend. I really appreciate you all. And thank you. Thank you very much. See you next week.